Hi everyone, I'm Kat Koehler with Home Instead Senior Care, and I want to thank you so much for joining us for today's Alzheimer's live chat. As you may know, our monthly chats are brought to you by Home Instead Senior Care, a family network of locally owned franchise offices and your trusted in-home care agency, helping you keep your aging loved ones in their home as they grow older. Now, before we get started with our chat, I do want to go over just a few little tips and bits of information. We have muted all of your lines just to keep that background noise down to a minimum. We know you guys are very busy, and we want you to be able to continue on with any tasks you're doing while you are listening. You can begin submitting your question by typing it into the question section you see on your screen. And don't worry about grabbing a pencil and a pad of paper to take notes if you don't want to. We are going to email you a link to the recording of our chat today, as well as links to the resources that we mention throughout. And you'll receive that after the live chat today. So let me introduce you to who you'll be hearing from today. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Kat Koehler. I'm the social media advocate here at Home Instead Senior Care. That means that I chat with you on Facebook and Twitter, and of course, host our monthly live chats. I'm very pleased to bring my colleague and friend, Molly Carpenter, back as our expert for this month's chat. Molly is an author, a speaker, a trainer, and a family caregiver. So she has experience from many different walks of her journey. Molly's book is called Confidence to Care, a resource for family caregivers providing Alzheimer's disease or other dementia care at home. Confidence to Care really has become that essential handbook for the family caregiver and even professional caregivers, because it offers such practical insights to really understanding not only how to manage certain behavioral symptoms, but maybe why those symptoms are occurring. So, Molly, welcome to our live chat.
Thank you, Kat. It's so good to be here again with you and with everybody out there. I really look forward to our time together and really look forward to listening and hearing questions and hopefully providing some good insights and answers to some of the common challenges that a lot of you caregivers are out there facing. So I look forward to today's conversation.
Absolutely. And Molly, you made me think of something that I sometimes forget to mention, but that's that our listeners really are experts themselves. So I invite all of you, if you have tips that relate to a question we discuss, please put them into the question box, because we know you guys have been through a lot of these situations as well, and your experience may be able to help another caregiver.
That's a great point, absolutely. And a lot of the things that I know in my career and everything I've been through, I've learned from other family caregivers as well. So that's a great point. Thanks for mentioning that, Kat.
Yeah, so Molly, we are talking about a topic today that I think can really make or break the caregiving experience, and that's family dynamics. How do we improve our communication, work as a team, and really make decisions together that are in the best interest of the care recipient? So my first question
that's really
for you.
Important. Sorry, Kat.
No, go ahead.
You're absolutely right when you say it can make or break the caregiving situation. Having been around so many families and so many different scenarios, it definitely can set the tone. It can provide. It'll be successful or not. I mean, how the family is working together and talking and communicating all matters very, very much. So I am thrilled to have that be the topic for today as well, because there's always room to have this discussion and to learn different insights from each other.
Absolutely. Molly, give us some insight. You have worked with so many families for a number of years, and if you're on the computer, I know Molly is very young, but you would be surprised at how long she has actually worked in senior care and Alzheimer's and dementia care. So she has a lot of experience. And give us some ideas on what is the bad side? What is the detriment if families don't work on being a team? What can go wrong?
You know, that's a great question. And it's interesting because when the family is not on the same page or they're not getting along or not communicating, who's suffering the most is usually the care recipients. Because even if the person has dementia or Alzheimer's disease, even, whatever the scenario is, how a family is interacting, how they are around each other, that person can pick up on that. They know if there's tension in the room. I've said this time and time again, how we are, like our presence, our body language, how we're responding in the moment, all of that, a care recipient, our loved ones, they can pick up on that. So if a family isn't getting along, if there's tension, if there's communication issues, if somebody didn't pull their weight on something, ultimately that care recipient is going to feel that because the family caregiver is likely stressed or upset or nervous or you name it. There's some sort of an emotion there. And so I think that's the bad side is the care recipient's feeling it. And in all actuality, everybody's feeling it. When the team isn't working together, everybody's feeling bad. Even if you're the person who thinks you're right, how good does right feel when other people are upset, for example? I've been in, you're right, Kat, I've had about almost 20 years in the actual field working with families, and I've seen the ugly, I've seen the bad side, and even the caregivers the ones who say, oh, it's this my sibling's fault. You pause and think, well, what good did that just do to call that person out? How does that make you feel any better? No, it doesn't in the long run when you think about it. So it's a great question, and unfortunately, it's bad when it's not a team effort.
Well, let's take some questions and help our listeners, hopefully get on the good side of all of this. Now, Molly, our first question we're going to take today came to us from our website. And for those of you who are not familiar with our website, it is helpforalzheimersfamilies.com, and there's all kinds of great information that you can find there. Molly, this question comes from Lupita, and here's her question. My mother has first stages of dementia. It is hard for her to be alone now, mostly because she also suffers from depression since my father passed away. I have 6 siblings, 2 of whom live out of state. Between the other 4 of us, here with my mom, we are always wondering who is going to have mom for that day. Sometimes this causes resentment between my siblings and me. Since I am the only one not working right now, everyone thinks she should stay with me, but I get exhausted. We had a family meeting a couple of months ago, and nothing has changed, meaning we still don't agree on everything concerning my mother. Currently, she lives with my brother, who is single and never home. So my mother is always lonely by herself at home and always crying. Not sure what else to do. Personally, I feel helpless. Any tips? So what do you think, Molly?
Lupita, oh boy, first of all, thank you for reaching out, Lupita. That's heartbreaking, but unfortunately, this is a common scenario. So I thank you for having the courage to write in, because other people are going to benefit from your situation and your story, and hopefully you can benefit too from some ideas here. But first, I want to say thank you for sending the question. Congratulations on at least having a family meeting. I mean, that to me speaks volumes. You guys as a unit, your siblings and yourself, you're not too far off yet. You're at least trying to work this out, and I really appreciate that. And I think you should not be so hard on yourself about that the situation is still lingering, because let me tell you this. You mentioned something about we still don't agree on everything. Lupita, you're never going to agree on everything. But what you've got to agree on are the basic big things that are affecting everybody's life. And I think that it sounds like you need another family meeting. And in fact, you probably need a couple more family meetings to get things straight. I would start with, is there somebody, could be you, that maybe wants to take on a little bit of a leadership role in this group? Meaning, somebody that's going to be okay saying, this is what we agreed on and it's not happening. Maybe you don't need that person, but it sounds like when you mention something about things aren't changing, nothing has changed since the last meeting, it sounds like we need to either find somebody to be in charge, or maybe you need to make a list of rules. Maybe you need to get on not rules, but what you've all agreed to do. Maybe you need to get on an email string and you said, at the last meeting, here's the 5 things we decided and who's in charge. So that if things aren't going well, you know who to talk to about it. But when you're having this family meeting, I think it's important to start with establishing what your goals are. And to me, your goal is you all want your mom to be happy. You don't want her to be alone during the day. You want her to have a good quality of life. And so when you all just establish that you're all there for the same reasons, that can go a long way with a sibling discussion. Also, when you're having these discussions, I think everybody needs to take a role. Everybody needs a job, so to speak. So, and I also think it sounds like you're questioning every day where she goes. Is there any way you can get on more of a schedule? Because as a person that has Alzheimer's disease or dementia, a routine is very, very, very helpful. And so the stress of determining where she's going each day really is going to need to, by you guys getting on a schedule, is really going to help your mother during this situation as well. I think as your family, I understand you're the only one not working, and perhaps you are feeling a little bit of the burden and taking the load right now. And I think it's okay to say, look, team, I will be happy to take some time since I'm not working right now, or since I do have a little spare time, but I'm going to need a break, or somebody else is going to have to take a turn and I'm going to need a few weeks off, or whatever it may be. This is all about compromise. It's all about compromise when you're having these conversations. And I think probably my biggest tip that I can share, or that I can talk with families about, that I wish I would have known this a long time ago, or remembered this, is that we really need to start with understanding where people are coming from. If we assume that our siblings are all on the same page and their heart is in the right place and everybody just wants mom to be safe and loved and happy and have a good life, then we have to assume the best. So if somebody says something, we can't automatically just assume they're, being a jerk, or they're not doing their part, or it really is helpful if we go in with a positive attitude of seeking to understand before we start to kind of judge, what are the facts in the situation of the scenario of why your siblings either can't help that day or aren't doing the role they said they would do, so to speak. Because when it comes to families,
those are great, Molly.
Yeah, because Kat, when it comes to families, everybody loves their parents so much, and so the heart is in the right place. It's just we forget about it sometimes, and we don't look at it that way because we're mad at them for not doing their part, and we're burnt out maybe, and that's why we're probably mad at them, so to speak.
I love my favorite thing that you said, and it's so hard for all of us because family is an emotional thing. But
yes.
I think you're right. The biggest game changer is assuming positive intent.
Yes.
Assume that they're trying to do the best.
Absolutely. And I think
Uh,
when somebody else is calling another family member out, or they are doing this just because they want this, or they, whatever the intention is, we got to ask ourselves, why do we even think that about the person? What is threatening us that we're not doing good right now? What is it? And my gosh, it's your sibling. It's okay to say, look, you're doing this and this is how you're making me feel. Help me understand why you're doing a certain thing, or not doing a certain thing, for example.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes, Molly, we have, as siblings, we have baggage from the past, right?
Yes.
Mom always liked you best, or you were always the smart one, or you were, and we have those labels. And
Yes.
one thing I would challenge us all to do is to stop looking at in a negative way, but use those as compliments. Marty, Mom has always been so proud of how good you are with money. Maybe that's something that you can do, is help track Mom's finances and make sure bills get paid. So instead of thinking of it as a negative, we all like compliments, right? So using honey to get people to get on board and help out.
That is an excellent, excellent point. And you're right about labels and past baggage, and somebody did something one time, and so now we think every time they say this or do this, they're doing this negative thing again, when really, the sibling, they may not even remember that was the scenario from the past. I'm thinking about when people make comments and they kind of jab at I jab with my sibling all the time, and she'll say something to me, and I'm like, oh, she knows right which button to hit. She did that on purpose. But she doesn't even know that that's a hot button for me, maybe,
Sure.
because I've never said anything. So it's those kind of things. So Lupita, I think you're on the right path. And I think if the worst case scenario for you guys is, and it's not even a bad scenario, is maybe in the future you need to involve a professional, meaning a social worker or a nurse or some kind of a healthcare professional that might be able to kind of, sit you guys down and have a family meeting together and sort of talk through some things, which is not usually necessary, but sometimes you might need an unbiased person. Maybe have a family friend that's a medical professional that might have some insight about, maybe not, doesn't have to be a geriatrician that knows about Alzheimer's, but just somebody that is used to patient care or caregiving or seniors or anything like that. You could go that step, but I think you guys the fact that you've already had a family meeting, to me, screams volumes that you're doing really good and you're really trying.
Yeah, actually one of our listeners on today's chat, Jill, recommended, you can find support programs who offer caregiver coaching as well as family meeting facilitation services.
There you go.
One tip I would give, Lupita, is, plan that family meeting, but, give it several days, but ask your siblings to come with a list of things, with a list of information. What are they able to do, right? Because, if your brother doesn't have a car, then probably transportation isn't going to be on his list. And what are they willing to do? And so when the four of you come together, look at what are your strong suits, what are you able, what are you willing to do, and match up tasks that way. The other thing I would recommend is consider getting a family calendar. So whether you all have it on your smartphone, whether you do it in Excel and everybody gets a copy, and plan out, maybe it's for a month, or maybe it's just 2 weeks of, where is Mom going? On that calendar can be Mom's appointments. That will also allow, your siblings to say, hey, I have a trip coming up next month, so I won't be able to take X week. So really maybe just a little more organization and communication, I think will help. And Molly, like you said, the fact that they had a family meeting is a huge step.
Huge step. but that's a great point, Kat. I love your suggestion around what are your concerns? What can you do? What are you willing to do? Bringing that to the meeting, so important
Yep.
because it's one of those things. Sometimes we ask people to do things that they're really probably not capable to do, and transportation is a good example. But I've been in situations where families, there's certain I have an aunt with early onset Alzheimer's, and my cousin is not, she's just the most beautiful person. I love her dearly, but she is not emotionally able to handle the situation today. She's very shocked. She's very upset. I can barely talk to her without her getting in tears in seconds. So how could I ever expect her to schedule the next doctor's appointment or tell me what the doctor said? Or, I mean, there's just no way. It just can't happen. And so I had to learn that the hard way after a very frustrating couple of phone calls, like, oh, wait a second, I'm asking her to do something she's unable to do right now. Now, that could change in the future, obviously, but, right now she's unable to handle the situation.
Lupita, good luck, and please let us know how it goes after your next family meeting. Molly, I'm going to move on to a question from Gabrielle, who is joining us today. And it's a great question that I think a lot of us, if we haven't yet found ourselves in this situation, we will. So here's her question. Gabrielle asks, my mother has vascular dementia. When she fell down the stairs at home, we moved her to a condo. There are 4 siblings. She now has 24/7 care and is still recovering from the fall. My question is, how do the 3 siblings approach the sister who has given most of her time into caregiving? How do we convince her that we aren't saying she has or is doing a bad job, but there certainly are some areas that need to be addressed? That's a tough one, Molly, but it's a conversation that...
You are exactly right. That is a tough one, but it's definitely a conversation that needs to happen. To start that off, I would definitely, based on what we just said about the ability for somebody to do the work that she's doing, I guess not knowing a lot of the details, is there some opportunity to understand what her strengths are, because clearly she has some strengths, and can we sort of present the situation as, we need you to focus here versus here, so to speak. So let me, like, for example, I don't know a lot of the details. So if there's an issue with maybe she's so focused on caring for mom that she's let other things go, like maybe the dishes aren't done, like there's a cleaning thing, or maybe the food she's cooking isn't as nutritious as it should be, or isn't as healthy or something. So obviously her strength, or where she wants to spend most of her time, which is probably the most important thing, is caring for mom. So when we're having this conversation with her, it's more of, let us help you take the load off, or let us help you, a way to say it, let us help you focus on where you can make the biggest impact, and let's take some of this other stuff off your plate, or let's bring in some different care for this, for example, or whatever. I'm not sure if that's kind of the details, Kat, if you've got more details than that, but because it sounds like she has 24/7 care.
Right.
Is that what Gabrielle
and I
said?
think maybe another way, Molly, right? And Gabrielle, I mean, it sounds like you have a good relationship, but there are some things that are concerning. And, of course, we don't want to come to our sibling and call them out and say, hey, you're doing a terrible job, because you don't think that. But maybe, I mean, this makes me think of, something like, is mom not maybe getting bathed well enough or often enough? Is your sibling not comfortable doing that? Something that maybe they're able to do it, but they're not willing, and there's something we can help with. Or, if it's something that they're not doing correctly or properly, instead of calling them out and saying, we need you to change the way you're doing this, one of the, consider, finding some information or sharing a story about, hey, my friend is going through the same thing with, or my coworker is going through the same thing with his mom, and he was telling me about how, giving baths was really difficult, and so they actually had the caregiver, the professional caregiver, do it. Oh, hold on, Molly, 1 second. I just got some more information that might help.
Okay, good, because Kat, that was an excellent point. That was going to be my next example. Was
go for it.
How do you? I do that all the time. I use examples of so and so said this, or I read an article about this, about how hard it is for caregivers to give baths. And I sort of talk about, like, tell me how you do it. Like, what are your tips? And so because remember what we said before, you've got to understand what's happening before we start to give pointers or say you're doing it wrong, which I know you would never say, Gabriella, obviously. But we've got to understand the scenario. So when you're going into the situation, you've got to think about, what am I missing? What do I need to understand here? How is she doing it? Does she just not understand? Is she missing something? Like, I can give you the simplest example of a professional caregiver story where a family wanted baseboards cleaned, and they called and said, we need the caregiver to clean the baseboards. So we told the caregiver, okay, make sure you clean the baseboards. A few days went by, family called, still haven't done the baseboards. My mom is crazy about cleaning the baseboards. The caregiver still hasn't done the baseboards. So we call the caregiver, and she finally admits she doesn't know what a baseboard is. So it's things like that where we've really got to try to instead of just, you're doing it wrong, clean the baseboards, it was, did you ever have your grandmother be crazy about cleaning baseboards? I know I did. Can you imagine having how crazy they were about cleaning baseboards? Do you know where the baseboards are? Or what would you use to clean the baseboard? So you just sort of have this conversation before you go right into judging and you're doing it wrong and clean the baseboards. That's my simplest example I can use there.
And I think even before, Molly, maybe having conversations is sit down and let's manage expectations. What are our priorities in our loved one's care? Is this something that is really important and we have to address, or is this just something we would like to happen?
That's a great example.
I would have this conversation as a family. Like, you guys, let's get on the same expectation, or the same page of what our expectations are for mom's care. What are the deal breakers? And I would just have a list of, these are the deal breakers. She has to be clean. She has to be safe. What are they? And beyond that, we all are going to learn to bite our tongues and smile.
Kat, that is an excellent point. And a personal family story with that one is, you're absolutely right. My aunt, she always did my grandmother's laundry. And my mom was a long-distance caregiver about an hour away. And finally said, my mom said, I can do the laundry. And my aunt said, okay, fine. Oh, well, my mom didn't do the laundry right. And it was just, she didn't like the smell of the fabric softener. So my aunt is a little bit of a control freak. God love her. But it just came down to the point was, is that really something to get in a fight over or a discussion over? It's just, so you're right. You've got to get on the right expectations. If she was going to let her do the laundry, okay, well, I use Tide. Mom's used to Tide, so please use Tide. Okay. But is that even that big of an expectation? The point is the clothes were clean. That's all we needed to know. So you're exactly right, Kat. The family getting together and getting on the same page with expectations is a crucial point.
Yep. All right, Gabrielle, good luck. It is tough, but you guys are doing, it looks like, a great job. So keep it up, and please, let us know how everything goes. Now, Molly, I want to take a question that isn't so much about family dynamics, but it's a question that we get a lot because we've all been there, and it's one that can really, I think, eat at us. And this comes from Jill. Jill wants to know, is it best to correct when a story is being told and it's untrue?
You know, that is a question we get all the time, isn't it, Kat? And it's such a great question. And believe me, this has been, myself as a young professional, when I first started in the field, I was a correcting fool. That's all I did was correct stories. But really, when you think about it, now in my wise age of, in the 40s
and Molly,
here,
how exhausting was that?
Exhausting. You're absolutely right. And when you think back about it, it really doesn't matter. It really, that nothing matters about it. And the fact is, how do you feel when you're corrected? Terrible. You feel like, oh, I'm stupid, or oh, I can't believe I got that wrong, or I can't believe I said that wrong, and you feel foolish. And so when we correct people with Alzheimer's disease or dementia, or a senior for that matter, does it really matter? It doesn't really matter in the long run. People mix up dates all the time. People mix up, they like, how many times have you mixed up a story that happened years ago, but you're telling it like it happened a week ago? I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios. And really, you just have to think about it, especially when it's just a pointless story that doesn't really matter. It's not worth correcting. Now, if there are scenarios where people ask me often, what if somebody is telling a story and they act like the person that they're telling is alive and they're really gone or passed away?
Yeah.
That's another nuance to it. And I think what my always advice in that scenario is sort of to validate what's happening there. This person's having a memory about somebody they love. Perhaps they're missing them at that moment. Perhaps they're just so happy about this story. So there's really no reason to say, well, your mom's dead. She died 30 years ago. It's more, tell me more about your mom. Tell me another story about her. Tell me about this memory when you lived back on the farm, or whatever it is. So I think we always, when somebody's telling a story like that, it's more, we have to think about it as, we need to validate how they're feeling, kind of read into the story, what's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, Molly, I think I'll share one of my personal stories, and I think you've heard it before. In fact, I hadn't been with Home Instead for more than a month, and I had about a 1-year-old son at the time, and my grandmother called me and was obviously, she had Alzheimer's, was obviously having delusions. So, and the scary part of the delusion is she was quite certain that my husband and son were in a car accident and my son was killed.
Oh my gosh.
She was telling the story over and over and over again. And so, I tried reassuring her, and no, he's at daycare, he's great. And she was admitted to the hospital that day, and she was telling, she got to her room, and I was with her, and a nurse came in, and she said to the nurse, "This is my granddaughter who just lost her 1-year-old baby." And the nurse says, "Oh I am so sorry." And I just had to give her that look and kind of mouth, "It's not true. He's okay. She's having delusions." And so as it was a horrible, horrible time, but I could no longer go on correcting her, because in her mind it was real. That was her reality.
Right.
And so I'd say, "Oh, I know, Grandma, he's such a sweet, sweet baby. And do you remember?" And we would talk about, his giggles, and going into that space with her was the best thing, because it calmed her down. I knew the truth. So, it was no longer upsetting for me. But we say it all the time, live in their reality.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that you can see how that worked when you when you just start talking about the person, and you start to, share memories and, oh, just he has the best smile, doesn't he? It works a little bit to just calm them down and not to focus on what they think is happening. And
Right.
I mean, obviously she might have been missing his face. Maybe she hadn't seen him in a few
Right.
days, and just maybe wanted to see him and just wanted some joyous laughter and a beautiful smile from your son. I mean, there's just so many things you can think about what she was maybe feeling at that moment. So that
Yep.
is a great way to handle the situation.
Molly, we have a question coming in. And before I go on, Jill, I want to thank Jill for her question and for joining us. And even when it's hard, sometimes you just have to smile and nod. So keep it up, Jill.
Yeah.
Our next question about family dynamics comes in from Kathy, who is on the live chat with us today. So Kathy, thank you for joining Molly and myself. Here's her question. Kathy asks, my mom is in the beginning of the moderate stage of Alzheimer's. I live 40 minutes away and work full time. I've been able to take care of Mom, who lives by herself, for the past 2.5 years. She will be moving into an independent living center, which is good, but also difficult. My brother lives in Kentucky and only comes on select holidays. He says he can't come more because he has a job and family, yet he says I'm controlling and not telling him what is going on. Might I ask he doesn't ask either. I acknowledge I am angry with him for not doing anything and need to let that go. How can we work together?
Kathy, that's a very great question. And I think you've already are on the right road by saying you're acknowledging that you're mad at him and that you definitely need to let that go. But that doesn't mean, I don't mean let it go. I mean, you need to figure out a solution together. But once you determine that solution, which we'll talk about here in a second, you need to let the past go of what he did in the past, of how he hasn't been in her life for the last however many years and is kind of a remote caregiver, so to speak. But I think it sounds to me like you're going to get some added support just because of her moving into an independent living. So that should be a little bit helpful. But this is, again, one of those scenarios where you guys, you obviously, I can tell just by the way you are phrasing your comments and the way you're talking, you obviously both love your mother so much and you want her to be safe and cared for. So that's the good news. You both have the same goal. It's just you're both going at it about it a different way. And we have to go back to, Kathy, not everybody is built to be this the person in your mom's life. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of us are daughters and we're females, and we are usually the ones that take the brunt of the caregiving load. And that isn't right or wrong. It's just the way that we're built, I think, as people. And so he's probably naturally just assuming a lot of things when it comes to that, and assuming it's your role, and assuming because you're the daughter, and assuming all of those things. So again, we have to go back to, you guys need to have an honest face-to-face conversation, or at least on the phone, conversation about what is, why, you have to understand where he's coming from versus where you're at, and he needs to understand where you're coming from. So let me give you an example. And I don't know your family at all, obviously, but maybe he is very nervous and scared. Maybe he doesn't want to admit to you that he's scared to do any kind of caregiving. Maybe he doesn't want to admit that you have a better relationship with her than he does. I mean, there's so many things that we could come up with, but that's just what we're doing. We're coming up with things. So you've got to get to the heart of where he's at and why. And same with him, with you. He needs to understand where you're at and what you've been through and what you're going through. So you guys need to really connect on a different level and really get to the point of where you're at with each other. You got to remember, this is your brother. You love him. He is your family. so you guys have this common bond already, and so we just have to figure out how to get back to that place. I also think, though, he is like, he needs a job to do, and you need to probably give him a job. And it could be the finances. It could be, there's a lot of things he could do from remote. I mean, he could order refills on prescriptions. I mean, he can set up transportation to doctor's appointments. There's all kinds of things that he can do remotely, and it sounds like he's, like, just the way you're describing it, he sounds like he feels a little out of touch, and he feels like you're running the show, which you are because you're the one there. So there's nothing wrong with that. And so I feel like he needs to get a job. He needs to get a few jobs in this scenario, a few roles. And you guys need to talk about that together. And then, as Kat and I both said earlier today, you need to get on a regular kind of cadence with communication. Get on an email string. Send a note once a week, or send a text once a week, or a phone call once a week. Whatever it is, you guys should have a check-in point, and you should just make it a regular thing. It doesn't have to be necessarily the same time every week or whatever, but you've just got to make that point. And the whole time you're doing this, each of you, both of you, need to kind of look in the mirror. And Kathy, you need to ask yourself, am I controlling a little bit? And why am I doing that? Why am I keeping him from knowing things? Which I'm not saying that's what you're doing, because I know we don't do that. But we sometimes might say, oh, I'm not going to call him on that. He doesn't care anyway. That could be definitely something that's been thought of in your head, maybe, when maybe he does want to know that. But again, this is where you guys, I am totally just, kind of giving examples because I don't know your situation, so please don't take any offense to it. But this is the kind of stuff where you guys need to have an honest, good conversation to get some of this out, get on the same page, and move forward, and then forget the past. Like you said, I got to move on from the anger, but you got to get to a place before you can move on, obviously.
Yeah, that's great ideas. And Kathy, this is such a tough situation, especially when you have siblings that live in different locations. My mom's side of the family I always use as my example of the success story. My grandparents were aging, and I had my aunt who lived in the same town, my mother who lived probably a good 18 hours away, and then their brother who lived probably a good 20 plus hours away. And, it could have been very easy for it to all fall on my aunt's plate because she was right there. Instead, what they did was really quite remarkable. My aunt took care of the day-to-day things, transportation to appointments, making sure groceries, the check-ins, all that things that somebody physically needs to be there. My mom is the planner in the family. They all played off of their strengths. My mom is the planner and probably the most level-headed one. So she would be the one to talk my aunt off the ledge when she would call and upset and frantic. She was also the one who, when they needed some home remodeling done to make it a little more friendly as they aged, to find all the contractors to organize everything. And then her husband, because he owns his own company and work from home, was able to physically go there and oversee everything. Now, my uncle was in a position to be able to finance a lot of things. And then what they did was every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, they all got on a conference call and did a rundown of, hey, what did this week look like? And, Kathy would say, well, these are the appointments. Here's what the doctor said. My uncle has a medical background, so he could kind of let them know, okay, in layman's term, this is what it means. My mom was able to kind of reorganize everybody and make sure everybody was in the right frame of mind and organized. And so being able to do that was immensely valuable to the care that their parents received. And they constantly had to reevaluate the roles that they played. My grandmother now lives with my mother, so people have different roles now. But I would say one of the biggest things is what is that communication expectation? Ask your brother, what are the things you want to know about? And can we just have a standing phone call on, this time, this day? Maybe it's Saturday morning while you're having coffee, or maybe it's Wednesday evenings, and you just, both of you know, this is when I talk to my sibling.
That's a great point, Kat.
I really encourage you to keep trying. I love the idea of giving him a job. Instead of giving it to him, ask him. We said it before. What are you able to do? What are you willing to do? Brother, you've made a great life with your career and your family in Kentucky, and I know you're really busy. Here are the things that mom needs. Of this list, what are some things that you could do from a distance?
Right.
So
exactly. That's a great point. And sharing all the things you're doing too, Kathy. So maybe there's something on the list he wants to do that's on your list and you take a different thing, or this is all about a compromise. But I know this sometimes sounds easier said than done, and I know that it's hard because you guys have not been getting along, and I don't mean to make this sound easy, but I just, like Kat said, try to take the first step, try to have the conversation again, and hopefully you're going to get down a better path. Now, are you going to hit a point, like Kat said, things are going to change all the time. So you could hit a point again where you're mad and you're angry at him and things aren't going well. So you just have to keep, family's hard, relationships are hard, people are hard, and we just have to remember that if you go back to assuming positive intent and remember you both want the same things can go a little bit better.
Absolutely. So good luck. It's a tough situation. Kathy, do know you're not the only one. So let us know down the road how things are going. We'd really like to hear from you. Okay, Molly, we're talking about challenging family situations, those family dynamics in caregiving. And I think we are going to go from difficult to even more difficult here with one of our guests on the live chat with us. And this comes from Brenda. So bear with me here. I love that she gives us some good detail so we can work with this. Here's what she has to say. Help. I am power of attorney. What do I do when the family cannot get on the same page? There is no willingness to work with me, and there is a constant power struggle by 2 of the 4 siblings against me. One sibling is very negative and angry and will argue and challenge and make wrong assumptions about myself, even on this past Christmas day. Another sibling will put our mother in unsafe situations. Neither will admit that their actions are not in the best interest of our mom. What do you do with such a toxic family? I have tried repeatedly, but nothing seems to work. We never did have a good family environment, but 2 of us have chosen to change our lives for the better. But the other 2 are still set in those old destructive ways. As of the nasty email on Christmas Day, I have put up a barrier in order to protect myself. I am limiting interactions with them. There's just no talking to them. What do I do?
Wow, Brenda, I'm so sorry that your family's going through this. This is, oh gosh, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when you hear these stories. And unfortunately, I think your best bet right now is to get some professional help. There are quite a few mediators out there. They offer those kind of services where they're just an impartial party. They listen to everybody, individually, and then they listen as a unit. And they, you know, it's even to the point where I know it's hard, like if you were the one who sets that up, your other siblings might think, well, she's already told them everything, and so she's poisoned their mind. No, it doesn't usually work like that. It's one of those where you find the person and you set the appointment up, and then everybody shows up and gets to talk for the first time. So there's some things that they do to make sure, but I really think that might be your best bet at this point. I know that sometimes that service can be a little bit, I guess I don't know what the price is, but I would assume it's a little bit expensive. So somebody else on the call on this chat mentioned about family meeting resources and family services like that. I would definitely start with some kind of an organization like a family service organization. I know I have one where we're located. It's called Heartland Family Services. There's a family, we have an area office on aging, which they actually have lots of resources and could point in a direction. They even have that service sometimes at those types of locations, at those types of resources in the community. But I definitely think you're to the point where it sounds like you need immediate help because, again, Brenda, we don't know the details, and I don't think we don't need to know the details. But when you're talking about putting mom in dangerous situations, that is very concerning. And obviously, you don't want anything to happen to your mom, and neither do your siblings. But when those types of things are happening, that's usually when you have to get a major intervention that usually involves, some kind of authority figure, so to speak. So I don't want to scare you or anything like that, but if you're really concerned about your mom's health and safety with one of your siblings, it's absolutely time to involve a professional. Kat, what do you think?
Yeah, that was the thing that jumped out at me. Your first priority is your mother's safety. And fortunately, being the power of attorney, you have some power to help ensure that. And your relationship with your siblings will have to come second because mom's safety is priority number one. That being said, using, if you're working, see if your employer has an EAP program that may give you some resources where maybe the first couple of sessions are at no cost to you. And even if you do go the route of, hey, let's get a family meeting facilitator here. I would encourage you to see a therapist or a counselor yourself, just you. Have that safe place where you can discuss some of these family dynamics because from my experience, it eats at your soul, and you have to have that place. So please take advantage of that. And thank you again to our listener, Jill, who wrote in to remind us that, excuse me, many of these programs that have like the caregiver support programs that have like mediators and things like that will work on a sliding scale as far as their fees go. So so they can look at, hey, based on your family's financials, we can give you this discounted rate. But Molly, you were so right. It's time to bring in some professional help. And, quite honestly, Brenda, if there comes a point, from my experience, I found letting go of the drama, not feeding into it, not spending time thinking about it was the best thing I could do. And I know that's hard, and quite honestly, therapy helped me the most with that.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think the point about therapy is good. Just again, and the EAP is an excellent idea, Kat, and it's a great point because your EAP even you can go see a counselor for free usually, and they have other recommendations, and they're not necessarily psychiatrists, but they can say to you, okay, family, you've got some things. You sibling here, you need to go. Need to seriously see a therapist, or you over here. Like they'll recommend individual support services that are available, and it's not you doing any of it. It's an impartial person.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times when you call your EAP or even the mediators, you don't know if you're getting a girl or a boy. You're showing up at an appointment, and you're getting in a room with somebody that you've never seen before. And so that really helps the family, kind of everybody kind of go in with the same expectations of we have no idea, what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, and we had, Molly, we had somebody ask, what is an EAP? EAP stands for Employee Assistance Program. Many employers, through their benefits package, have this at no cost to their employees. So go talk to your HR department and see, hey, do we have an employee assistance program? Excuse me, and what services are involved with that? A lot of times there's financial, legal, emotional support type services.
Yes.
So, Molly, we are almost at the end of our hour.
Oh my gosh.
I know, before we're done, I want to make sure we give some resources to the folks listening. I mentioned our website at the beginning, and I want to remind you, it's helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. Great website, lots of resources. You can ask our experts your questions. You can follow blogs. And then, of course, there's confidencetocare.com. If you're looking for a book, or you're not, but you're looking for some ways to help you manage as an Alzheimer's or another dementia family caregiver, this really is the one to get. Molly, I really love the way that you've laid it out. It's you don't have to read the whole thing. If, on Thursday you're having some issues with repetition, boom, you just go to the chapter on repetition, which is page 85, and it gives you some information, some tips, and so it really is that go-to guide. So confidencetocare.com. And if you're on Facebook, will you please come join us? We're at facebook.com/rememberforalzheimer's. We are a fantastic community of people who hold Alzheimer's near and dear. So whether we're professionals, family caregivers, we have a huge audience there, and we want you to join us. We try to give you education, inspiration, information, all of that good stuff to help you through your caregiving journey. Okay, so you guys, we've done 12 live chats in 2015. And Molly, I cannot believe the year is almost over.
I know.
It's gone quick. And Molly, I want to thank you for joining us so many times this year as our expert. You're always a thrill, and you bring such great practical tips, so thank you.
Thank you for having me, and good luck to everybody out there.
Yes, and I want to ask all of you to please stay tuned. Go to our website, helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. Go to our Facebook page, and that's where you're going to hear the latest information on the 2016 live chat event schedule. Until then, and as always, you can email us at livechat@homeinstead.com. Thank you for a fantastic 2015, and we look forward to talking to you all next year. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.